This is Terry Cleaver here reporting for Dover Community Radio. The date is Tuesday the 9th of November 2010 and I'm here to talk to Marilyn Stephenson Knight from the Dover War Memorial Project. She's currently involved with the activities locally in remembrance of the unknown warrior. So Maggie, please could you tell us a little bit about the background of the unknown warrior and his story?
Right. The unknown warrior was somebody who died out on the Western Front during the Great War, and the idea came to a reverend who was out there, a chaplain who was out there with the troops, when he saw a row of crosses without names on them and realised that there were men there that nobody would ever know, and behind those men there were families back in England, back in Britain, across the world, who would be mourning the loss of their loved ones. And he wondered what he could do to try to help. So he came up with the idea of having one person that would come back to be buried in state amongst the kings as a symbol of all of those who lost their lives and as a focus for the families who could never go to see the grave of the loved ones that they had lost. And what happened was he had to persuade the king and various other people, and they went out to the Western Front, and from the main battlefields on the Western Front they exhumed some of the bodies that had been buried there, all of the bodies in unmarked graves. There were between 4 and 6, the accounts are a bit uncertain, and they took them to a chapel at St. Paul in France, and at midnight somebody came in and touched one of the bodies that was lying out on a table. He kept his eyes closed so that he didn't know who it was, and that person became the unknown warrior, the one that is going to be buried in state at Westminster Abbey. And the other bodies that were not chosen were reverently reburied. The unknown warrior was then placed into a coffin made of oak from Hampton Court Palace, and was brought back to Dover through Boulogne with a lot of ceremony and a great deal of honour. He came back on the HMS Verdun and docked at the Admiralty Pier in Dover on the afternoon of the 10th of November 1920, and we're actually celebrating now the 90th anniversary of his return through Dover. And from Dover he was placed on a train to go all the way up via Chatham to London to Victoria Station, and he lay at Victoria Station overnight, and then on the morning of the 11th of November the coffin was taken on a gun carriage drawn by 6 black horses from the station past Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey, pausing on the way at the cenotaph where King George V was waiting for it. And it got there at exactly 11 o'clock, which was the time of the armistice of the Great War. And at that moment Big Ben announced the 2-minute silence and the cenotaph was unveiled. So that was the moment we saw the cenotaph in its entirety, the cenotaph proper, for the first time. And after the 2-minute silence, the unknown warrior went on to be buried at Westminster Abbey. He had a guard of honour of over 100 people who had got various awards for gallantry, amongst the recipients of the Victoria Cross, and special guests amongst the congregation when he was buried were widows, women who had lost their husbands and all of their sons in the Great War. There were around 100 of them who were guests to see him buried. And he was buried in a tomb at the west end of the nave amongst soil that had been brought from the various battlefields of the Western Front, so he's still buried in that soil. And 1.25 million people in that first week filed past where he was buried. And a year later his tomb was covered with a marble slab from Belgium, and words were inscribed on it which were made from ordnance left over from the First World War. And that basically is the story of the unknown warrior. He has become and is a symbol for all of the people who could not go to a grave to mourn, who'd lost people within the war. A symbol of the honour that we give to those people who gave their lives, and a symbol of sympathy with those who gave everything they had, the families who lost the people that they loved.
You said there that the unknown warrior passed through Dover. What was the feeling like in the town at the time when he came through?
Well, the feeling in the town of Dover when he came through, Dover was packed. He was going to come in onto the Admiralty Pier, and all around along the seafront and where the beginning of the pier was lined with people waiting to see him come in, and along the Prince of Wales Pier they were all standing there watching him come too. There was a certain amount of upset in Dover actually at the time, because the unknown warrior was transferred from the Verdun into the luggage van. It was a passenger luggage van that he was carried in on the train that went up to London, and that happened within the area of the Marine Station. So quite a lot of people, only invited dignitaries, couldn't see the transfer, but the people that were on the Prince of Wales Pier had an absolutely magnificent view of the Verdun as she came in, and of the coffin and of the warrior being removed. And there was a gun salute as well, and tremendous solemnity all the way through. It aroused a terrific amount of interest when he came through.
So you've been researching his story and the background of his life when he was buried. Was there any facts that you found that you could tell us about?
Were there any facts that we found? I think some of the interesting facts that we had were the things like the guests of honour and the guard of honour and the letters on the tomb being made of the ordnance, and I think amazing things like how much he meant to the number of people that came out to London. The streets were absolutely lined from, almost the night before, waiting to see the cortege pass through on the roads to see him go to Westminster Abbey. And I think that the tremendous amount of feeling that was involved when he came home, I think that is something that's very moving.
Now, I know you've been working with the school children locally with regards to the project. How did they feel about the story?
We approached the story of the unknown warrior in a slightly different way, because to understand the concept of the unknown warrior and what he means and how he symbolises remembrance is actually not an easy thing to pick up. So what we did with all the school children that we were working with, and also the Scouts and Brownies in Dover, was to choose casualties local to the area where the schools or the Scouts and Brownies were, who had no known grave, and tell the story of those particular casualties, and then say these are stories like so many of the stories. Any one of these casualties could have been the unknown warrior. This is what this person's life was like. Wonder what the unknown warrior's life was like. And in that way it personalises it, because if you understand the story of one or two of the people who went through the Great War, what they did, what their families did, who they were married to, who their children were, then you begin to get much more of an understanding of what it actually means to have a symbol of remembrance, and why remembrance is so very, very important. And so when we were in Dover, the casualties that we followed were two of them. One was called Cecil Bromley, and he was an aviation pioneer. He was a solicitor's clerk, but he was actually inspired. He saw Blériot land, and he saw Charles Stuart Rolls do his double cross-channel flight, and decided to take up flying, or at least aviation experiments, as his career. He worked for a while at Whitfield Aerodrome conducting aviation experiments, and I suppose he must have thought his dreams came true when he joined the Royal Flying Corps. Just before the Great War started, he joined as a mechanic, which must have been wonderful for him. Served out in France, came back to qualify as a pilot, and he was flying on an observational patrol trying to understand the lines of the trenches when he was shot down. His plane was shot down and he was fatally wounded, and the lieutenant that was flying with him was badly injured, fortunately did survive. And Cecil Bromley, he was born in Dover, he was just 20 when he died. And the other one that we followed in Dover is somebody who's really very significant, because he's fortunate enough to have a road named after him. Now this is Tommy Eaves, and he was a teacher at St Martin's School, and a much loved and well respected teacher at St Martin's School. And he also founded the 3rd St Martin's Dover Scout Group. And to this day they meet in Eaves Hall, which was built in 1934 in his memory, which is in Eaves Road, both of which were named after him. And I think it's a token of how well respected and how well loved he was, that even 30 years after his death they still remembered him and wanted to name a road after him. And decades after his death, the Old Boys Association at school was still drinking a toast in his memory. Now his wife, they'd only been married a couple of years when Tommy Eaves died. He died in 1916 too, and she continued teaching at St Martin's School for the rest of her life until she retired.
Now you mentioned St Martin's School there, which I believe you've been doing the activities with. What sort of activities have you been doing with the pupils there to inform them about the unknown warrior and the other two stories you mentioned?
The St Martin's Primary School pupils have been lovely. We've been working with them quite a lot, and we've had people come down from Westminster to interact with them as well. Now, St Martin's School happens to have a special place for me because it's the school that I used to go to, and it's a family school because my brother went there and my cousins went there and my uncles went there, and when the school was opened in 1903, my granddad and all his brothers and sisters went there as well. So for me it's been a wonderful homecoming to be able to go back there. And the pupils at the school were fabulous. They were fantastic. We had people come down from Westminster to teach them about the two casualties, Cecil Bromley and Tommy Eaves, and about what life was like in the trenches, various things, and they were able to handle original artefacts such as medals, and they were able to look at original sources like army records and birth certificates, so that they could extract information about their particular chosen casualty. And then after that, the pupils in the classes designed a stained glass window and an epitaph for their chosen casualty, either Cecil Bromley or Tommy Eaves, and an epitaph and a window for each casualty was taken up to Westminster by the pupils. They went up in a group to the school to lay on the tomb of the unknown warrior. When they had their visit to Westminster, that was an occasion of very, very mixed emotions. It was joyous at some times and very solemn at others. They were fortunate enough they were able to attend a specially written play which was based on a story which was published in the Evening Standard in 1920, at the time when the unknown warrior was buried, and it was called The Mothers of Britain. And it was a story of people travelling to see the unknown warrior being taken to Westminster Abbey, and each person that was travelling was saying, I know he's my husband, I know he's my son. And what that basically was saying was, this symbolises that this unknown warrior has meaning for all of us. The children were able to watch a play about that, and it was a terrific play because they were able to participate and follow the life of a soldier as he left home. They had the final dance, he went out to the trenches, he did his training, and what happened at the end. And I've never seen such an enthusiastic bunch of pupils. They were a delight. Every time a volunteer was asked for, they all had their hands up and they participated wonderfully noisily, so that was joyous. And after that they met an actor who was playing the part of Reverend Railton, who was the person who was the army chaplain who first conceived the idea of the unknown warrior, and he talked to them a little bit about what he'd done and where the idea had come from and what it was like to be a soldier in the trenches. How would you pass your time? Would you be writing home? Would you be thinking of your family? And following that, all the young people were able to go to the tomb and to have an act of remembrance by the tomb. Now that was very solemn, very quiet, very beautiful. A lot of the public who were in the Abbey at the time joined in with us all, and it was at that time that the young people were able to lay their epitaphs on the tomb for their chosen casualty and to lay their stained glass windows there too.
You mentioned plays there that they watched to get to grips with the story. I understand they're doing a play of their own tomorrow at St Martin's Primary School. Please could you tell us a little bit about that?
They are. St Martin's Primary School, on the exact 90th anniversary of the unknown warrior coming home, are performing a specially written musical. It's been written by a composer who's composed for things like Ballet Rambert and such like. His name is Russell Hepplewhite. And I have seen the words of the musical, and I know that it tells the story of the unknown warrior, and I know that it emphasises a whole list of names, including those from the school war memorial, any one of whom could have been the unknown warrior. And I've heard reports from all the rehearsals that have been going on, because they've been rehearsing like mad over these last few days, that it's very beautiful, it's very moving. One of the teachers was welling up with tears, somebody else felt goosebumps. I haven't yet had the privilege of hearing the music, just seeing the words, and I'm looking forward to this so much.
So with you just looking forward to it, is that a reason why people should go and actually see it?
we have been overwhelmed with people wanting to go and see it, and we've had to limit it to invitation only. Obviously, a lot of the parents of the children are going to be coming, and various other people from Dover, and the school tell me that it is packed out. The seats have all gone, but we are very fortunate in that we've had a terrific amount of support from people like the Mayor and the Mayoress and the Deputy Mayor are coming, the Dover Society, Royal Artillery Association, Old Ferosians, who are former pupils of the Boys' Grammar, because Tommy Eves, one of the casualties, was a pupil there. A lot of people are coming to give their particular support, and I think it's going to be an evening to look forward to and an evening to remember.
Now, I know there are lots of other activities going on about the Unknown Warrior this week. One of them is a peal at St Mary's Church. Please could you tell us a little bit about that?
St Mary's Church, they've got 8 bells there, and they are going to be ringing a peal of 5,040 changes of grands or triples, and a peal is quite a big thing to be able to do. It takes over 3 hours of solid ringing, and you never repeat a change in the sequence of the bells during that time. And they are doing it. It will actually take part partially during the time when the Unknown Warrior would have been in Dover at the Admiralty Pier and going through the Marine Station. And they're going to ring it half muffled as well, which is a very, very beautiful sound, in honour of the solemnity of the occasion and in honour of Remembrance. This is actually wonderful because in 1919 they rang a peal of bells to welcome back Edith Cavell, the nurse. She's fairly well known as being a martyr in the First World War, and this is an echo, if you like, of that they're now ringing a peal for the Unknown Warrior also coming home through Dover.
So it's certainly definitely one to listen out for then tomorrow.
I'm going to be up at St Martin's School most of the day tomorrow while the children are rehearsing and performing, but between the afternoon performance and the evening one, I'm going to go down into Dover and I'm going to stand in the street outside so that I don't disturb the ringers and listen to the bells ringing, because I think it is such an achievement and it will be such a beautiful sound, and that's something else to be looking forward to, I think.
So are there any other activities about the Unknown Warrior happening this week other than the ones we've actually mentioned?
Indeed there are. One of the other people that we've been liaising with is the Kent and East Sussex Railway, and they are fortunate in that they have been gifted the passenger luggage van in which the body of the Unknown Warrior was transported from Dover to Westminster Abbey. And it wasn't just the Unknown Warrior, it was also Captain Fryatt and Nurse Edith Cavell, who were killed during the Great War too. They were all transported in the same one, and they received a Heritage Lottery Fund grant to restore that van, and tomorrow, the 90th anniversary of the Unknown Warrior, is when they're going to have the commemoration of the van and actually open it to the public for viewing, and that will be at Tenterden.
Why do you think it's so important to keep memories alive like that of the Unknown Warrior?
Right. I think it is very important to keep the memories of everybody alive. All of those who served, all of those who lost their lives, the families that were at home, wondering what was happening to their loved ones, the families that were bereaved. I think it's very, very important that we don't forget. The Unknown Warrior is a symbol of that. It's a symbol of the remembrance. But I think it's essential that we don't forget, because not only did these people go out and give absolutely everything that they possibly could, so that we can enjoy the lives that we have today, but I think it's also a message for today's life that in a way we owe them a huge debt, and just one of the ways that we can begin to try to repay that debt is to live our own lives to the absolute full.
How can our listeners find out more about the stories that we have spoken about this evening?
Well, one of the ways the listeners can find out is to have a look at the Dover War Memorial Project website. That's Dover's virtual memorial, where we will be featuring what we've been doing on the Unknown Warrior, and we feature over 2,000 of Dover's casualties on there too. And that's at www.doverwarmemorialproject.org.uk.
Thank you very much, Marilyn.
Thank you.